Hi everyone, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology bringing you another chart reading, and today I'm going to focus on the chart of Heather Locklear. If you want to follow along, she was born on September 25th, 1961 in Los Angeles, California, and we do have a birth time of 5:40 p.m. And the reason I'm looking at her chart is because unfortunately she is in the headlines yesterday and today regarding a arrest for domestic battery, and then shortly after that her boyfriend who was involved in that situation was arrested for DWI and DUI, and so it's just sort of catapulted her into the spotlight, and I wanted to look at her chart to figure out what is going on. So she is a Libra sun at 2 degrees. She is a Aries moon at 24 degrees, and she's an Aries rising at 2 degrees. And she has a T-square in her chart with that Aries moon, which opposes Mars at 26 degrees Libra, and both of those planets square her Jupiter conjunct Saturn. Saturn's at 23, Jupiter's at 27 in Capricorn. So there's this T-square, and if we just think about the moon in Aries, that's a very fiery, emotional person. But with the opposition from the moon to Mars, that often means that Martian energy, because oppositions bring in the experience of relating with others, that Mars energy often kind of is expressed or experienced outside of her through these Martian kind of experiences. So I would suggest with this pattern that, there's a lot of her kind of expressing her fiery Aries moon, and then she gets, coming back at her this kind of intense Mars warrior, energy received back in response to that Aries moon. And really the challenge here is to, really with Aries moon, it's a lot about learning patience. It's a lot about learning to kind of control that sort of impulsive emotional expression. And especially with the opposition from Mars, even though it looks like it's coming at you from the outside, it's still your own personal energy that you're having to learn how to navigate. So, there would be a part of her energy that she's having to learn to kind of like recognize and work with, so that she's not always kind of running into these very in some ways kind of combative situations with other people. Now again, both of those planets square Jupiter conjunct Saturn in Capricorn, and let's think about what that means. I mean, Jupiter is the principle of expansion and philosophy, but it's also just an energy that can make things bigger. And then it's sitting next to Saturn, which is the energy of discipline and contraction and lessons. So that brings in another quality here, especially in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is about, learning to do things more slowly and methodically, and in a way that, isn't always the most kind of impulsive and not very well thought out. It's a very grounded energy. So in some ways, this Jupiter and Saturn together in Capricorn will potentially allow for, some sort of balance to that impulsive nature of the Mars and the moon in Aries, Mars opposite moon in Aries energy. But of course, T-squares, we kind of experience them over time, and we learn from them over time, and that's how we learn to perhaps do things in a different way ultimately. And her sun is right there on that 7th house cusp. So really, her solar energy plays out in the area of relationships and relating to others in that Libran way, wanting to try and find harmony and balance. And with that Sun trining that Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Capricorn, there is an opportunity here, I would say even more so, because of that T-square energy, for her to really bring the more grounded aspects of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction into her self-expression. The last thing I want to discuss about her chart before we move on to the transits is that she has a couple of conjunctions. She's got Mars conjunct Mercury. Mars is at 26 Libra, Mercury is at 28 Libra, and that just, brings about somebody who has a lot to say, is passionate about what they say. And again, both of those planets oppose her Aries moon. So sometimes, her emotions may get the better of her and not, allow her to really kind of like think more thoroughly about what it is she's actually wanting to express. And the other thing is that her Venus, which is her star of destiny because she's a Libra, is in Virgo at 2 degrees, and it's conjunct Pluto at 8 degrees. And if you just take Venus and Pluto together, that's an intense, loving nature. Pluto rules Scorpio, so there's an intensity about how, she expresses her feminine, passionate nature. And although Virgo would be more conservative or reserved in that expression, those two planets still sit right next to each other. And then actually Uranus is in the mix too, because it is next to her Venus. Her Uranus is at 28 degrees Leo, so it's about 4 degrees away from her Venus. So there's a little stellium there with Venus, Uranus, and Pluto. And if you think about that, that's just like a lot of exciting energy, but also intense energy that needs to recognize the process of regeneration and learn through the Uranian insight around areas of loving and of her relationships. And the last thing I want to mention about her Venus is that it is directly opposite Chiron in Pisces at 2 degrees. Now, to have your Venus opposite Chiron can mean that there's definitely some sort of wounding in relating to relationships, because Chiron is the wounded healer, and it's opposing that Venus exactly. So if we take it a little step further, the Chiron is in the sign of Pisces. Well, Pisces has to do with a wound around really not believing in anything, a wound around feeling like you're the victim all the time, a wound around not really having faith in things. And sometimes, and let me clarify this with some information from a book called Chiron by Martin Lass, Healing Body and Soul. And he talks about when Chiron is in aspect to certain planets, you get certain manifestations energetically. So he says, with Chiron opposite Venus, our wounds and issues will invariably manifest through our relationship life, constantly challenging and confronting us to attend to them. We tend to play out the drama of these wounds and issues within our relationships, inevitably attracting partners who exacerbate them. In this way, we are given the opportunity to heal and evolve our consciousness. And since her Chiron is in the sign of Pisces, I could see that perhaps substance abuse might be one expression of the challenging energy of having Chiron in Pisces, because Pisces wants to transcend. So I would think that one of the wounds expression, if you're not connecting with, the healing qualities of Chiron and Pisces, which would be, recognizing the flow of life, recognizing that everything is in order or everything has its place in a sense, that perhaps you would seek, to transcend in these less elevated ways that still kind of provide that experience, but ultimately not in the long term. And Martin Lass says the healing path is returning to trust and faith in spirit, God, and the divine, the universal, the revealing of the love of Creator, a return to oneness, wholeness, and completeness, being able to look anywhere in our lives and in the lives of others and see nothing except the action and presence of love. Okay, so let's move on to her transits, because that's really what's happening right now. She's okay, so transiting Uranus has been in the sign of Aries, and it's been going through mid-20s, heading towards late 20s as it begins to enter Taurus, coming up shortly here. But her moon, again, I said, as at 24 degrees Aries. Her Mars, 26 degrees Libra. Her Mercury, 28 degrees Libra. And her Saturn, 23 degrees Capricorn. And Jupiter, 27 degrees Capricorn. So that's her T-square. And as as Uranus has been coming over through Aries, it's been setting off all of these planets, because all of these planets are in cardinal signs. But that's really what's been going on, because it's bringing up, Uranus wants to help us understand more. Uranus wants to elevate our consciousness, but it often does it by like shaking us free of behaviors and patterns and just kind of like shocking us. It goes, oh, we go, oh my gosh, like what the heck is going on? That's Uranus. And it's doing that to those parts of her chart that comprise her T-square. So let's go back to, the Uranus conjuncting her moon, which is basically happening right now, this month, or completing. The moon is our emotions. The moon is our home. The moon is how we express our nurturing to other people. And in Aries, it's like it's very, again, fiery and passionate and inspired, and it wants to just do, and it wants to just kind of like express its emotional nature in a very in some ways kind of an aggressive way, and but it's really more like, because it's just like, it's like this, do it like this, or I feel this. And to have Uranus come by, it's kind of like it's going to really stir up the emotions and make her very volatile in some ways, and especially because that moon is part of that opposition to Mars and the opposition to Mercury and the square to Jupiter and the square to Saturn. It's going to bring up a lot of intensity for her. And let me read quickly from Robert Hand's writing about what Uranus conjunct the moon is all about. And he says that Uranus conjunct the moon signifies a time of enormous psychological change and possibly emotional turmoil. Among its manifestations are the following: sudden incidences involving women, emotional upsets, emotional rashness and impulsiveness, sudden changes of mood, changes in your most intimate domestic and personal life, especially at home, and possibly sudden incidents concerning your mother or another female relative. But he says it's about truly getting in touch with your feelings, is the point of this transit, rather than, so much focusing on what this transit is taking away. So perhaps, in some ways what's happening is just a manifestation of the need for her to make certain changes in her life. And unfortunately, it's kind of coming about in a very drastic way. Let's briefly discuss what Uranus opposite Mars is all about. And of course, that is a similar, that time frame is just coming up over the next month. So she's not really cleared from all of this yet, and will need to continue to be vigilant, about what it is, this is trying to help her maybe see about herself. And I would say with so much Libra Sun, Mars in Libra, Mercury in Libra, that perhaps sometimes it's hard to really know, or not know, but really act on what you feel, because Libras can sometimes find themselves in indecision, and it's difficult to make choices because you can see all sides of things. So to have Uranus coming by and opposing the Mars, her action energy in the sign of harmony and balance, it can be saying that it's very important for her right now to really listen to the Uranian wake-up call of the need to really, Uranus in Libra, Uranus in Aries, assert self-assertion, while at the same time, trying to do it in a way that doesn't cause too much disruption, because Mars in Libra really doesn't want to create waves. It wants to find the harmony and balance. But if it's out of balance, or you're not doing that well enough for yourself, Uranus can come by and say, hey, you need to start really making sure that you're finding the right balance in your self-assertion expression through the Mars principle. And then the Uranus will oppose the Mercury. And again, I mean, that's going to happen, that's going to happen April this year until February of next year. Mercury is how we communicate, how we talk, our thought process. So in some ways there could be new insights coming in, because Uranus is about waking up and understanding more and getting that sort of intuitive insight about things. So opposing the Mercury in Libra, again, if that Mercury's out of balance in any way, this Uranian principle will bring things back into balance, hopefully. But also at the same time needing to be sort of careful and aware of how you're expressing this Uranian nature in relationships and with others, because there's a tendency with Uranus to just be really throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You don't necessarily find the balance or find the harmony because you're feeling your independence so much that at all costs, you've got to express it. So that's the challenge with these oppositions, is to make sure that you're kind of striking the balance between expressing your independence as well as not being too disharmonious or un-Libran-like with the with the Mercury in Libra. So the only other thing that's going on that I feel is worth mentioning is that her Uranus by solar arc is opposing her moon as well. So she's got some heavy Uranus stuff happening right now, and it's going to continue through this year until the Uranus finishes opposing the Mercury in February of 2019. So it's really just a kind of a volatile time for her, and she would do well if she kind of could recognize this energy and do her best to facilitate it without, complicating it through any use of drugs or alcohol and that kind of thing that makes you less able to, see as clearly as necessary. All right, well, this has been my reading of Heather Locklear's chart. If you are interested in getting a reading from me, you can contact me at info@highaltitudeastrology.com. Also subscribe to this channel. I would appreciate it, and I will catch you during the next chart reading. Thank you so much. Adios.